Welcome to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're talking about the final day of the groups for the Berlin Major for Rainbow Six Siege. And there's so much stuff to talk about today because we actually have the bracket already. So I'm going to try to move quickly. Hopefully I don't really have to breeze over too much stuff, but I know there's so much to talk about, so I'm going to be trying to move quickly. So, all right, let's take a look at how the day went down. And okay, so I'm not going to really go in order chronologically. I'm just going to go in order of the groups as I have been doing. Coming into the day, FaZe, W7M, and Elevate were confirmed for the playoffs. Sonics could not make it to the playoffs, so there were still 12 teams vying for those final five spots, and then we still had seeding stuff to figure out. And okay, so XSET does take the first seed. They were in first place in the group coming into the day, and then they went 2-0. So they've been quite good in the groups, and well, 5-1 just tells you pretty much all you need to know. Plus 15 on round differential, 15 points on the board. Rogue, it did end up being a little bit close. They looked like after the first day they were going to be very dominant, but in the end it was a bit closer than this point disparity would suggest, because it came down to really this game. If Ninjas in Pajamas had beat Rogue 7-5 instead of lost 5-7, then it would be Nip taking the spot. They'd be on 9 points, Rogue on 8 points. And then even if they went overtime and then certain things happened, Nip still had a chance, but they would have had to done well against XSET, which seemed unlikely based on how XSET had been playing, but still it was possible. Maybe they would have even played a little bit harder had they had a chance, but of course coming into this last game, they no longer had a chance. They still were playing, actually they weren't playing for anything, because some teams at some points were playing to make it to the third seed instead of fourth seed. That does get you more prize money and SI points, so it is desirable, but no, they already had the 6 points on the board. So after Damwon took these losses, they were sort of already locked into last place. And I mean, I guess a good showing by Damwon in this game, and then for some reason destroyed by XSET, one of the least close games that we've seen. The second time Damwon's been 7-1. So back to the drawing board with those guys, I suppose. And so as far as my predictions go, I didn't do too well overall. I think I only got 3 out of 8. Honestly, my predictions, I didn't put that much thought into them. I got XSET right, I got FaZe right, and I got W7M right. And then I thought it was Nip instead of Rogue. I thought it was Sonics instead of G2. I thought it was Oxygen instead of Wolves. And then the last group I did very poorly. I thought it was Astralis and M&M instead of Elevate and Furia. I think the M&M pick was a little bit bold. Probably also the Ninjas in Pajamas pick was a tad bit bold. And then I think I just sort of lost a coin flip sort of on G2 versus Sonics and Oxygen versus Wolves. But okay, maybe the other teams were a little bit favored, whatever. And okay, so as far as how I assess the teams, and again, I didn't put like too much thought into some of this. I'd say I maybe even underrated XSET a little bit, even though I thought they were going to progress. I probably underrated Rogue, overrated Nip by a little bit, and then I think I got Damwon pretty well right. I didn't think they were going to do very well, and they did not. And so that's Group A. Onward to Group B. Okay, so G2 steals the top spot from FaZe by 7-0ing them. The only 7-0 of the tournament. Maybe we'll see one in bracket, but it seems less likely than seeing it in the group stage. So certainly the only 7-0 of the group stage comes at the very end, and FaZe were still playing to get first seed. So I'm surprised that they didn't put up a fight at all. I mean, maybe they just could not. They truly couldn't stop the G2 onslaught. Maybe they wanted second seed for some reason. I doubt that's actually the case, but okay. Sonics do get to end their tournament run with a win. Good for them. It's their only win. So I think they got a single win at all 3 of the majors that they played as this 5-man roster. So in Mexico, in Sweden, and now here in Berlin. And so they've been awful at majors, but luckily for them, they did have a good run at the 6 Invitational, so they weren't always dreadful internationally. They do have that to work with, and I mean, obviously it's the best one to do well at, the Invitational being more prestigious than just the majors. And so yeah, they didn't manage to climb out of last place either. Sandbox, and I guess this also applies to Gaming Gladiators, I think they impressed enough. Obviously neither of them did especially well. Sandbox went 2-4, Gladiators went 1-5, but they had lots of good showings, and especially Gladiators, I expected them to get smoked, but even Sandbox, they weren't especially close. I mean, in terms of points, but yeah, they had pretty close games. I think if either of them get a little bit better, if they continue on their trajectory of improvement, or maybe even they just get a favorable group, assuming either of them or both of them makes it to the next major, I think it's entirely possible that either of them could make it out of their group, and maybe if a lot of things go their way and they do actually significantly improve. Maybe they could even make a bit of a bracket run. We'll have to see. So teams to look out for in the future. I don't think anybody looked pathetic at this event, but certainly there were some big letdowns, especially the NA teams. And okay, so did I look at? Oh no, okay. So Sandbox took down Sonics. So Sandbox actually beat Sonics both times. I suppose those are their only wins though. And then they had a close game versus G2, and then I already sort of talked about these. So we'll go on to Group C. Oh, and I guess I'll just say, yeah, I definitely underestimated G2. I thought it could have been them instead of Sonics. I just opted for Sonics. I overrated Sonics, underrated Sandbox, and I'd say I got FaZe about right. They did fall off a little bit. I kind of expected them to finish strong in the last day. They did have their spot secured, but still they did sort of they took a loss versus Sonics and they got massacred by G2. So we'll see if that actually translates into anything in the playoffs. But I think I got FaZe about right in my assessment of how well they would do. And then we have Group C, so W7M and Wolves advancing, Oxygen and Gaming Gladiators eliminated. And W7M, close game against Gaming Gladiators. So Gaming Gladiators, pretty much all their games were close, and certainly none of them were blowouts. They had a round 15 game, they had a round 11 game, 7-4. 7-4 is not that bad, but obviously, didn't go max regulation. Another 7-4, another overtime game, and then a max regulation. So yeah, a lot of close games, even if they did go 1-5. So pretty good showing from them for their international debut. And then what else do we have? Yeah, Oxygen, after they lost this game, their hopes for making playoffs wasn't completely gone, but they needed W7M to beat Wolves in regulation, and then depending on the round differential, they needed to beat Wolves themselves in regulation by a certain margin. So if this game had gone 7-5 in W7M's favor, I think Oxygen would have needed to get a 7-1 or a 7-0. It looked like W7M was about to crush Wolves. They were up like 4-0 or something like that, and then Wolves battled back. So a little bit of a surprise there. And I mean, look at the score lines for this group. Pretty banger games for the final day. I think the games felt a little bit less exciting on this final day because a lot of them they were playing for less. Some of them they were just playing for seeding, and some of the stuff had already been determined. So certainly a lot less impactful feeling than in the first 2 days. But I think that a lot of games did end up still being pretty exciting until we go to this last group, and none of the games are even close. So yeah, Furia and Elevate, I think a bit of a surprise. I think a lot of people had Elevate as one of the two teams making it out, but almost everybody had Astralis. And Astralis actually the worst performing team in the whole tournament. They only got 3 points, and we have 4 points from Gladiators, 5 points from Sonics, 4 points from Damwon, and again 3 points from Astralis. So a massive letdown. And I think a big reason I was watching Canadian stream for most of the event. That's how I was watching it, not the first day, but the second and third days. And he sort of mentioned this, and I realized, yeah, this is probably the case. They didn't really play too crazy of teams at the Charlotte Major, teams that they would be uncomfortable against. In groups, they played against BDS, Wolves, and Chiefs. And Chiefs were definitely one of the weakest teams at the event. They didn't get a single point, but pretty much all of their games were relatively close. They had a 3-7, 2 4-7s, and a 3-5-7. So they, especially 3 max regulation games, they were pretty close to at least getting some points, but still a little bit of work to do for the Chiefs. And BDS, Astralis went 1-1 against them. They tied them in points, but they beat them as far as head-to-head went. So Astralis got the first seed, and then they beat Wolves twice, I think, or did they go 1-1? They had one very, very close game, I think, on Cafe where they almost lost, but they didn't. So they did 2-0 them. And Wolves obviously did very good at this event, but they were still in a formative stage. They had just joined the org, and they were just settling in as a 5-man roster. So, I mean, they were a lot fresher of a team 3 months ago, and now Astralis has to play against the insane likes of Furia and Elevate in their group, and it just didn't work out for them. Also in Charlotte, they played against only NA teams in the playoffs. They played Xset, Oxygen, Dark Zero, and they beat the first 2. They didn't beat Dark Zero, but it was a close affair. So playing teams that they were uncomfortable against here, it looked like was a big reason to why they did so poorly. And now, I mean, hopefully they can figure out how to deal with it in the future, but they won't have another shot at international competition until, I guess, the next major if they qualify for that. M&M, yeah, I did predict them, and I would say I overrated them. I do think that they're still sort of a team to look out for in the future. They did only go -1 on round differential. They went 3-3 overall. So late into the event, they sort of figured their stuff out. They went 2-0. Two decisive games too on the final day, but it wasn't enough for them. So if they make the next major, maybe they'll be a team to look out for. But they did come up a little bit short, and then Elevate, they fell massively short on the last day. They got crushed these 2 games, and had they won these 2 games, Astralis' hopes would have been alive for making the playoffs. Astralis would have needed to got, I think, I don't know, like the full 6 points or 5 points or whatever it was. But yeah, all not a very exciting group overall. No max regulation, and things were determined pretty quickly. Even if some of the matchups themselves, I think, are quite exciting. Furia, Elevate, again, two of the wilder teams to watch. So nice to see them go head to head. And Furia didn't have to only win on Border, but they only won on Oregon and Border. So maybe those maps will be banned against them in the playoffs, and we'll see how they do with that. So I guess, yeah, I underrated Furia. I guess I underrated Elevate a little bit, overrated M&M, massively overrated Astralis, biggest letdown of the tournament. I hope they bounce back from this. We'll have to see. Oh, I also wanted to mention Oxygen. I do wonder if we watch their honeymoon phase come to an end in real time. They sort of started to falter at the end of this last stage, and then, well, they got knocked out of this event, pretty quickly. Things worked against them pretty quickly. They were backs against the wall coming into this last day. It didn't work out for them. And so, yeah, this is the thing that happens with the Oxygen squads a lot. Same thing happened with Kino and Yaga. They did very well, and then it was in stage 1, and then I think in stage 2, I guess, they got like 7th or 6th or whatever it was in the NAL, didn't go to the major, and it lasted a little bit longer here. They got they made it to both majors, and then finally at this major they fell apart a little bit. And maybe it's just it's not going to be a thing that lasts very, very long. Maybe they'll bounce back and they'll be very good in stage 3. Maybe they'll do well at the stage 3 major. We'll have to see, but just wanted to throw that in there. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the groups. So yeah, let's talk about the playoffs. So, okay, XSET versus Wolves, G2 versus Rogue, W7M versus Elevate, and Furia versus FaZe. So do notice that all 3 of the LATAM teams are on one side of the bracket. All 3 of the EU teams are on the other side of the bracket, and there's only one NA team and one APAC team. So that means that there will be 2 different regions represented in the grand final. So we do have to see a LATAM team kill here, an EU team kill here, and then potentially an EU team kill here, potentially a LATAM team kill here, but it will produce at least an inter-regional grand final, which I think is the preferred way. I wonder if Ubisoft even manufactured this a little bit. I don't know. They probably just do randomly, but who knows? Okay, so XSET versus Wolves. I'm always biased for the NA teams, and especially there's only one left here. Wolves have been pretty good, but XSET have also been pretty good. There was a reason XSET's the first seed, Wolves is a second seed. You might say XSET's group was easier. Maybe. I don't know. Up to interpretation, I guess, now in hindsight. But, okay, XSET, 3 of their players have been playing phenomenally. Yaga, Diaz, and especially Kino, playing the support, highest rated player on the team. I think highest rated support player in the tournament. If they can keep up a pretty good performance, and then either Spirits or Gomez, who are traditionally their 2 least consistent players, and also their worst performing players in this tournament. If one of them can pop off and the other 3 remain consistent, then I think XSET can probably lock this up. Also, Wolves have been extremely reliant on Mowgli, and I think that is by design. The team is really centered around his fragging prowess. So if XSET can manage to shut him down, then this could be an XSET victory. We'll have to see. I don't know if that's actually the correct prediction, but I'm just going to go with XSET. I mean, I like when I'm not really doing it for that much stake, I do like to predict the team that I actively want to be rooting for, and it certainly is XSET. I do kind of like Wolves as a team at this point, but I'm not gonna root against the only NA team remaining. And okay, G2 versus Rogue. So I think, yeah, so Rogue beat G2 during the regular stage. G2 didn't beat any of the other EU teams at the event here. They lost M&M, they lost to Rogue, they lost to Wolves, and so I don't remember what the scoreline was. I think it was pretty decisively in Rogue's favor. It was early in the stage when G2 took several losses. So by way of that, maybe Rogue has the advantage. G2 is coming into this red hot. Rogue got off to a good start, 2 wins, 2 losses in the second day, 2 wins in the final day, so they also have momentum. But I mean, G2 coming off a 7-0 against FaZe is just not and good enough to snag them that first seed. Who do I think is going to win this? I really don't know. G2, they did sort of fall apart once they got to the quarterfinals in Charlotte, but they look even better than they did in Charlotte. It felt like they farmed Heroic a little bit, a team that for some reason they usually just always beat. So had they had another team in their group, maybe that wouldn't have gone their way. But it did seem like the group of death at the time with Heroic and W7M and Dark Zero and them. I'm gonna go with G2, and I kind of want to root for Rogue, and they're a little bit underdogs, but I think G2 with the comeback that they had to make in the last stage, and then a little bit of a last dance situation. Supposedly Prano, maybe even another player is supposed to be leaving the roster after this. We'll see if that actually happens, but seems like it is. I'm just gonna go with G2. They're just something about them. I don't know. They got the Alamau magic and Citizens popping off, and Doki apparently was playing on the wrong sense up until the very last game, and then they 7-0'd FaZe, and Doki went like 12-1. So I'm just gonna go with them. I'm just gonna make the call. For some reason, I want to say Rogue, and maybe because I just think they're a little bit more of a cohesive team. But yeah, G2 has just been on fire, so we'll see what actually happens. Going to go with G2 there. W7M versus Elevate. This might be the most banger matchup of the quarterfinals. We'll have to see. You know, it's not a matchup with two teams from the same region, and so I think that automatically makes these two games a little bit more exciting than the other two, but we'll see how things actually play out. W7M, they play in LATAM, and they usually destroy everyone in LATAM. They only lost to FaZe I guess they lost to, I think NiP put them into losers, if I remember right, and then they lost to FaZe in the grand final. I think that's what happened, but I think W7M doesn't really have much of an issue playing against these sort of wild teams. They play against several wild teams in LATAM. Maybe Elevate is going to be wilder than any of them, but I'm going to opt for W7M here. I don't know. It's just sort of my sentiment, and maybe I'm underrating Elevate once again, but that is who I'm going to go with. And again, this might be the most exciting one to watch. We'll have to see. Finally, Furia versus FaZe, and I'll probably put it on the screen here. I forgot to look this one up. I don't recall who won their regular stage matchup, and maybe they played in Copa Elite 6. I don't quite recall. I think it's going to be a FaZe win, you know, and maybe this is also me underrating Furia a bit here, but generally Furia just doesn't stack up as well against the other LATAM teams, and there is a reason FaZe won Copa Elite 6, and Furia was the 4th seed, and again, I guess Furia did do quite well in their group. FaZe did lose out on that 1st seed, but I'm still going to go with FaZe for that prediction there. And honestly, I guess I'll show the stats really quickly. The video's already pretty long. I'm just going to scroll through them, and yeah, you can take a quick look. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit, but I just don't really want to make the video like 20 minutes if I don't have to. So going down the line, and then we have the Rogue players at the bottom. Okay, so yeah, we have Shuttle, Super, and Vertical, all 5 bottom rated players. All 5 used to play on Rogue, and the current Rogue roster is doing pretty well. So maybe a little bit of shenanigans, a little bit of dark magic going on, a little bit of soul stealing. I don't know. I think it's just a bit of a coincidence, but maybe this is really signifying the whole new guard taking over from the old guard. Okay, that is it for the group stage of the Berlin Major. Tomorrow is an off day. They're going to be, I don't know, teams will probably be scrimming, but they'll be doing media and whatever break. Okay, and then on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'll see the playoffs, so probably I'll be doing some amount of coverage for those. And okay, so questions, comments, concerns, corrections, requests, whatever, put them in the comments below. A like and a subscription would be appreciated. I will catch you guys in the next video.